Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
I'm Chris Clements.
And it is, it's never boring. It's never boring.
You know, we like to say, we keep running out of popcorn.
Yeah.
There's just plenty of popcorn to be had.
It is May 7th. It is Tuesday, May 7th. No, Wednesday, May 7th.
It's Wednesday. We usually do it on Tuesday. Yeah. We're a little bit off.
So,
welcome back.
Thank you. And yes, I was out last week. And thanks for holding down the fort.
Hey,
that was a great episode.
I thought we had a good podcast. It kind of started off a little slow, and then he took off. He got more comfortable.
Yeah,
which was great.
It was great.
So Jake Duffy, thanks for being on.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
Very good podcast. So woke up this morning to the news that
very early,
the top advisors for the Karrin Robson campaign for governor here in Arizona have fired her as a client.
I'm sorry, I should not laugh, but you sent me that this morning, and I had not been tracking that she actually had people at that level advising the campaign.
Yeah,
which is incredible when you think about it. It's absolutely incredible.
Well,
and they had certain very specific expectations of her.
Yes,
which was also not so incredible. I think it's actually quite reasonable.
Yeah, the headline is Scoop. Trump aides dump one of the two Arizona governor candidates he backed. As everyone knows, well, maybe not everyone, but as many people know, Trump co-endorsed both Karrin Taylor Robson and Congressman Andy Biggs.
But he endorsed Karrin first.
Yeah.
Correct?
Well, that was always a question.
Because when she announced, that's what she had on everything. It was because he was Trump endorsed.
Trump came into Arizona in December of last year for a Turning Point action rally of some sort. Freedom Fest or something?
Grifters are us.
No, I wouldn't say that.
I know I shouldn't, but it's true.
He came in for a Turning Point event, and he said nice things about Karrin. He said, if you run for governor, you'll have my support. So she took that as an endorsement.
Sure.
And she announced, and Trump endorsed, and everything out there said the only Trump endorsed candidate, blah, blah, blah. Then Andy Biggs jumps in to the race, and she continues to lean in on the Trump endorsement. And then a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
somebody did some polling.
Yeah.
Somebody that we know intimately on the show did some polling.
I wasn't the only one that commissioned polls, but
your poll was quite revealing.
Yeah,
I mean that's putting it lightly in many ways.
And then there were a number of polls that showed that Andy Biggs was way out ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't like your poll was an outlier.
No,
that was the point.
And then on April 22nd, Trump put out a Truth Social statement co-endorsing both.
Well, and for our audience, your poll specifically showed Andy up like 30 points over her.
Right.
It wasn't just a couple points here or there in terms of, margin of error stuff. It was running away with the election, the primary.
Closer to 40.
Okay.
But there were
it was
one of 5 polls that were out there that show that she's in the teens and Andy Biggs is in the 40s or 50s.
Yeah, which is unbelievable.
So what we learned from the article today, that if you didn't know, and it, a lot of people knew or thought they knew that Chris LaCivita was involved. They knew that Tony Fabrizio was her pollster.
Yeah.
And that Chris Grant, who heads MAGA Inc., which is the main pro-Trump super PAC, was also involved.
Yes.
All 3 of them.
That's huge.
Have left.
That's amazing.
And
that's called abandoning ship.
Yeah, it's
the lifeboats are there. Let's jump in them while we still can.
Trump aides. So this is the interesting part for me. Trump aides had told Robson that by running ads highlighting the president's endorsement, she could solidify backing from his voters in the swing state and make it harder for Biggs to get Trump's backing. So their argument was, you need to be up on TV talking about Trump's endorsement now, meaning before Trump co-endorsed.
Yeah.
So earlier in the year.
Yeah. You need to start doing the work now, laying the groundwork now to push off anyone from getting in the game. And raising a lot of money early.
Yeah, and then it says, but Trump's team felt misled when Robson waited to air the ads. Quote, she won't listen to anyone else, so she can run her own campaign now, said one person briefed on the Trump aide's exodus. It's pretty harsh.
That wasn't you?
No, I'm not a Trump aide. And for the record, I was not contacted about this story ahead of time.
No, there was one quote in there that
I
thought it was you. And I actually sent it to you and said, this sounds like you.
It's basically the greatest cell phone in GOP political history.
No, the quote before that.
Oh, it takes a special skill to botch a GOP primary with the Trump endorsement, but unfortunately, that's what this candidate has single-handedly assured, one GOP strategist told Axios. I was not that GOP strategist.
You were not, for the record.
For the record, I was not that person.
Well, it sounds like you. Something you would say.
I suppose that's
something I would say.
Possible that I would say that, but
I'm not a GOP strategist.
Yeah, true. I was blown away when she went up on TV last week because I thought, how crazy is it? It's this early. But as it turns out, it wasn't early enough.
Well, I mean, if that was their expectation.
And I guess
and she didn't do it, then that's a big thing.
Well, right. And so it is the ebb and flow of a candidate versus the consultant, and if the consultant, these are top consultants. Las Vegas legitimately a top consultant. Obviously,
you would think
he was the co-manager of Trump's election campaign in 2024. Tony Fabrizio is a very serious pollster.
Yeah, so, these are the top of the top. Yeah, you could say.
And so
I was taken back by that. I was taken back that they were actually that involved and this early. I mean, and then I was taken back by what you just said, which was with the revelation that they'd actually instructed her to do very specific things, and she refused to do them.
Yeah, well,
maybe refuse is too big a word, but so, I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes that we don't know.
We can't get into their head, so we don't know exactly what they're thinking, and I doubt we'll ever know because they're not going to air this out, which is fine. But my hunch is that their reason for telling her to tout the Trump endorsement early and often on TV was because they wanted Trump to feel like, okay, she's really appreciative. I'm locked in. I think it was a miscalculation for them to believe that Trump would not co-endorse once Andy Biggs got in. There's a close personal relationship. And so the co-endorsement was not a surprise to me.
No.
Apparently, it was a shock to others. And we've talked about this before. It was a shock to her.
We might have been the only two people that weren't shocked. I don't understand.
Well, there were a few others that weren't shocked. But apparently, no one in Robson camp that wasn't shocked. They were all shocked. And I think it's in part because I
think when he announced, we were talking about it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And then when the polling came out, I thought immediately, I go, okay, he's going to cover his bases on this. Sooner than later.
Yeah. So
that's just what he does.
This does explain a little bit about why the Robson people were as shocked as they were when the co-endorsement came, because they believed that it was locked up because Las Vegas was saying, we've got this locked up. So apparently, but Las Vegas would say, well, no, you didn't do what we said, which was get up on TV and look. If the idea is to get if the idea was to get Trump's attention on this, then she shouldn't be running TV ads in Arizona. She should be running TV ads in Mar-a-Lago and DC. No, I'm being serious. Run it on Fox News in Mar-a-Lago and Fox News on DC. So those are the two places he's going to be. So that when he's watching Fox News, he sees an ad that shows Karrin Taylor touting the endorsement.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean,
she had a big luncheon yesterday with like Jerry Colangelo.
That was yesterday?
That was yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So this
is going to hurt.
Yeah. So that was yesterday. And I wonder if it just did not go well. If there just wasn't.
Well, I can't imagine that the luncheon was, I mean, I think that's just bad coincidental timing.
Yeah, maybe.
Ooh. Okay. Well, as we say, it is always interesting in Arizona in politics. Well, it's always interesting in politics, but for whatever reason, Arizona is particularly interesting.
Well, I mean, these are two people well respected in different circles for sure. I mean, with Andy, you have a very accomplished legislator, both on the state side and federally. A lot of people are excited about his candidacy, which
yes,
and want to get things done, and a lot of people are really tired of this governor.
Yes,
and getting tired quicker.
There is a tremendous amount of excitement at the grassroots level for Andy Biggs, and there is generally a desire to replace Katie Hobbs. So both Biggs and Robson have enjoyed, respective support from lots of different people, because there's the unifying thing is we got to get rid of Hobbs.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Does this change anything in Robson's thinking? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I think it makes it a little bit more challenging. It's just not.
I probably shouldn't say this, but does it change any of the thinking in Ed's thinking? Perhaps, you got to raise a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean,
and now because of this, she's just going to be seen as the establishment candidate. And certainly that lunch yesterday was fully the establishment.
Yeah, it was not a Trumpy lunch.
No, it was not a Trumpy lunch. Not in the slightest. Not to say that some of those people who I know personally are full on for Trump.
Right.
But they're not part of, the grassroots MAGA.
Yeah.
Artifice, so to speak. The machine, the MAGA machine.
Yes. So that, let's wait and see what happens on the Arizona governor's race. And with, again,
full disclosure,
I'm helping Biggs.
And full disclosure, I am staying neutral.
Yeah.
I am giving money to both.
So.
And I'm pulling what I call a Bill Clements. It's something my dad used to do. And what he would say to both of them, try not to kill each other.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I never expected that this would be a knockdown, drag out fight. I
hope not. There's no reason for that. I mean, there's one goal and one goal only.
Yeah. I'm a believer that you can have contested primaries and be able to unify afterwards.
Yeah.
That should be that way. I would fully expect that that's going to be the case this time. I mean, I'm friends with Biggs, but I'm also friends with Karrin. Known her a long time, and tremendous amount of respect for her.
Yeah, I mean that's where I'm coming from. I like them both, and both.
I just happen
incredibly gracious to me over time, and
I happen to believe that Biggs has a better chance of winning the general, which is why I was involved. I got involved with him.
Sure,
so
and you've been working with him for a while, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what would be really interesting, I mean, I don't know if we want to pivot there, but, the race to succeed him is on.
It is on.
With Jay Feely and Travis Grentham.
Those are the only two announced, right?
Yeah.
Do you think anyone else is going to get in?
But both of them are starting to tout who's supporting them. Do I think anybody else is going to? Oh, I'm sure. But
I mean, it's a district in which the entire race
suck
is
up the oxygen.
Yeah.
Yeah, the entire race is the primary.
Yeah. Well, it'll be that will be an interesting race as well.
And we know people on both sides who are lining up.
Yeah, I've not leaned either way.
I'm on both mailing lists, and I get their.
Chris, you're on everybody's mailing list. I mean, you are a popular man.
No, I'm not.
You are a popular man in this state.
No. Although Jay did call me, and he did. He does want to come on the show, but I haven't heard from Travis. So
really,
yeah, I haven't heard from him.
Oh,
but Jay wants to come on the show.
Well, look, we'll have
former NFL.
Yeah, we'll have candidates, and I mean it's still early, so we've got plenty of time.
You know who wants to come on the show?
Who?
Rodney Glassman.
Oh, well, he's running for
Attorney General.
And Warren Peterson's running for Attorney
We
General.
love to have both of them on.
We'll have both those guys on. I mean, we'll even have Chris Mays on if she wants to come on. Now,
I would love to have Chris Mays
I've heard.
But I think she's running for governor.
You do think she's running for governor?
I can't imagine.
Because I
can't imagine anyone even on the left is happy with this governor. I just can't imagine.
Well, I have heard. It's interesting you say that because
it's a joke.
Because yesterday I heard even more rumor mill about the possibility that Chris Mays is going to run against Hobbs in the primary.
Oh, I think she'll win.
Yeah. Oh, I do believe that if Mays runs against Hobbs in the primary, she would win.
I mean, at that point, Hobbs can't not debate her, and if she does debate her, it's not going to go well for her. Yeah, there's only so much you can put in the iPad.
This could be very interesting.
That iPad is going to overheat. The iPad is going to overheat. It's going to melt on stage, and then it'll just be a complete and total disaster. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Katie Hobbs has a reputation of bringing her iPad everywhere because she cannot speak extemporaneously on anything. She's got to have everything prepared. It's like Joe Biden with the teleprompter. It's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, it is.
Which means she has no original thoughts.
It would be a stark contrast because Chris Mays is one of the smartest Democrats I know.
Yeah, you've known her for a long time.
I knew her when she was a Republican.
Yeah, we need to ask her about that because she worked for.
She was Bob Stump's, our great hero, Bob Stump's press secretary.
I know. So what happened? Who blue pilled her?
We
need to find. That would be the leading question.
You know what I actually just
Chris
realized?
Who blue pilled you?
She was Stump's press secretary before she went to work for the Republic? Is that right?
I believe so.
I can't remember.
You knew who would know?
Lisa. Yeah, Lisa would know.
She would know. She knows everything.
And then, so Chris was a reporter for the Arizona Republic. And then she ended up going to law school and becoming a very accomplished environmental lawyer.
That's what happened. She went to law school.
Ruined her.
That's what happened. Which law school did she go to?
ASU.
Yeah, that's what happened.
ASU.
She went to ASU Law and she got blue pilled.
And then she was on the Corporation Commission, very liberal member of the Corporation Commission, and then won as Attorney General.
Yeah, we should have her on. These are questions people need answers for.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's a very nice person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never had any issues with her. I mean, we probably don't agree on
anything.
98% of things at this point, but
that's okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't agree on probably anything with Ruben Gallego, but I've hung out with Ruben and I like Ruben.
Yeah.
And we had that conversation before. I think that's important. It's one of the crux of our show.
Yeah. So, so it's going to be and the reason. So here. I know that we have a lot of audience that's outside of Arizona, but the reason, obviously, we talk about Arizona a lot because we're in Arizona.
Well, we know Arizona. It is the center of the universe.
But it is and it will be a very, very important state in this next election cycle, just as it was last time. It'll be the first time in, 4 or 5 cycles in a row that we don't have a Senate race.
Yes.
Which is wild. But we are one of a very few states that has a Democrat governor in a state that Trump won that is up for election and at risk. So Katie Hobbs is the top of the at-risk list for incumbent Democrats up for election.
Yeah, and at risk for the reasons that we're talking about, both from her left and from the right.
So this coming cycle, unlike previous cycles, there nationally are only like 4 Senate races that are going to be even like that matter.
Yeah. Did you check out our friend the Ellis Report on his his sort of breakdown of all the races?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was really Ellis Insight for anybody.
Yeah, you need to check that out. That's sign up.
Jim Ellis.
Subscribe to Ellis Insights.
We've had him on the show several times. He has a daily sheet he sends out, and it's filled with great electoral tidbits across the fruited plain.
Yeah, he's got his pulse or his finger on the pulse nationally. So you've got states like Michigan and North Carolina and Maine and perhaps New Hampshire.
Hampshire is going to be, with Governor Sununu not running for Senate.
Did he take a pass?
He's taking a pass. Georgia now, I think, is in play because Brian Kemp is taking a pass.
It was in play. It's probably less in play. Well, Ossoff is more likely to win re-election.
Yeah, Ossoff is more.
Pass.
Yeah,
and here's
if Marjorie Taylor Greene is the nominee, forget it. It's done.
Oh gosh,
it's over.
She
says she's
Oh wow, yeah, that could be a bad thing.
So there's plenty of other candidates on our side.
The good news is that there isn't enough movement potential for the Republicans to lose the Senate. So the game's going to be the House on the national level, and then a bunch of these governors' races that are going to get extra attention because there's so few Senate races.
Yeah.
So a lot of the national money is going to be going into governors' races. Now, the thing that's interesting, and this is just give you a little behind-the-scenes look at the thinking that candidates or potential candidates have. And this is every time you hear about a governor and someone saying, oh, well, they're going to run for the Senate, it's very rare for that to be successful. I'm not saying it's rare that it happens, that they run, but in modern history, fewer than half of former governors who run for the Senate win. It's 48%.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
The inverse.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
I think I don't really know.
Okay.
Other than you take someone who's been a chief executive. He or she is used to doing it. Being the boss, running for an office in which they're one of 100.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't. I think there's just you just don't fit that role. Right?
Well, I was going to say, I think for a lot of governors, in terms of their calculation to run or not run, is precisely that. And the ones who do win, there's like a sense of regret that they express, because you're one of 100, and you have very little opportunity, especially as a freshman senator, to get things done. And they are used to getting things done. That's sort of part of their DNA. They have an executive level thinking, executive level DNA, and for especially for Republicans.
Yeah, the only one I can think of.
Democrats do it all day long.
The only one I can think of,
they really don't care about getting things done, but Republicans seem to.
Well, the only one I can think of at the top of my head is Rick Scott. He was governor of Florida and then now senator. Florida.
Yeah, and he's been an okay senator.
Yeah,
I would say not tremendous, but I think he likes being there.
But it's why when people used to say, "Oh, Doug Ducey's going to run for the Senate," I was always like, "No, why would he go from being chief executive to one of 100
of 2 terms?"
Yeah, very successful,
very successful,
and historic. As we get further away from his terms, he's going to be more and more respected.
Absolutely.
You just mark my words on that, because a lot of things going to show that stuff he did, the flat tax, ESAs, those things are going to be to Arizona's benefit for decades.
Yeah. Well, look at the backlash of this current governor if she even tries to touch any of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
The backlash is immediate.
Right.
Especially on ESAs, she hasn't even tried to touch taxes.
Yes. I'll give you an example.
That would be political suicide for her.
Here in Arizona, there's only been 2 times that we've had a governor either go Senate to governor, governor to Senate. Both of them were a long time ago. The first was Ernest McFarland, who was the Senate president when Barry Goldwater beat him in 1952, then ran for governor in 1954 and won. Okay. The only other one was Senator Paul Fannin, who took Goldwater's place in the Senate in 64 when he ran for president. Fannin took his seat, and then Goldwater came back, obviously. Fannin then went on to be governor after that. So that's the only 2 times in Arizona we've had that situation.
Yeah, going from the Senate to the governorship is a lot easier.
I mean, it just makes more sense.
Yeah, it's just much easier.
So
the only reason for a governor to go to the Senate is if they have that they feel there's something missing within their understanding of like international politics, foreign policy, whatever it is, and they want to get that experience. They're young enough to do it, but they have their sights to run for president.
I guess, yeah,
maybe.
But I mean, I do think it's telling that both Sununu and Kemp, governors, have taken passes on races in which
they would win.
They would likely win.
Yeah, they would win. I mean, it's going away.
It would be a race, but they would be senators.
Yeah,
and they're like, no thanks.
Yeah. Do you think this is something that popped in my head the other day too? But do you think that just the Trump factor also has something to do with it? They just don't want to be beholden to the agenda right now.
Yeah, maybe
because they both have not been exactly.
Yeah, they're not Trumpies.
They're not Trumpies. They're not. They've had their issues. They've had their battles with the president.
Right, and so that could play into it, but it's only 2 years.
Yeah,
I mean, they get elected. They're there for 2 years before he's gone.
Yeah, and they're not going to be able to do much in 2 years anyway.
Yeah, so maybe it had something to do with it, but I think most of it was, why would I go from being able to make all the decisions to making no decisions?
Yeah, when I can, go in the private sector and probably make a lot of money.
That, or just spend more time at home with family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think
that's when a lot of times when people leave politics, they say, "Oh, I'm leaving because we're going to spend more time with the family." People are like, "Oh, yeah." I mean, I think sometimes it's actually true.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it shows that their priorities are straight. Because family's way more important than anything else.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the vast, I mean, what we've experienced is that the vast majority of people who say that have some sort of scandal.
Well, yeah. More time with the family because I've got to repair my family.
Yeah, because I've got to repair my family because I blew it up.
Right. That could be.
Yeah. That happens more often than not.
So, speaking of elections,
yes,
we're in the midst of the process to elect a new pope.
Oh, yes.
And I have to be just to put this in perspective. So
I was going to ask you.
Many people know, I had been a lifetime Mormon. Bishop, I was, in, right?
You were.
And I'm now Catholic. And if you want to hear about that, we've talked about it on previous episodes. I did a episode on Drew the Catholic on YouTube. You can on YouTube search Drew the Catholic, Sean Noble or Bishop, and you'll find the episode where I talk about go into a 2-hour conversation about my conversion. As someone who grew up Mormon, and Mormons believe in a living prophet, right? There's a head of the church. The thought of election is like, ooh, that's not called by God. It's not like the 12 apostles sit around and cast a ballot. How terrible,
They kind of did, though.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, typically it's basically you are the prophet until you die. And then whoever's the senior ranking guy becomes the prophet.
Okay.
So
see, I know nothing.
That way you can say God's in control. Because if you live long enough to be the number one guy, you're going to be the number one guy. Right?
Gotcha.
But that's not the way it is in
they are conclaving as we speak.
So they are talking with each other, they're negotiating, whatever that is that they do. And I've watched both Conclave, the movie, and Two Popes. Two Popes strikes me as a more accurate description.
Well, I've heard Conclave, the movie, is blasphemous.
Well, it gets a little hinky at the end. But it's interesting to watch the process, right? Yeah, I took it all with a grain of salt. The thing that makes me this is very interesting for me to watch as a new Catholic, to go through this process of getting a new pope. I realize that the person, is important, but God is going to speak to whoever sits in Peter's chair. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, the only thing that people outside the church, I think, would who are not Catholic, would pray for and hope is that that whoever is deemed to be worthy to be called pope, hopefully it's Timothy Dolan, but
it's not going to happen. But we can wish.
We can wish. It's time for American Pope, but we can wish. So whoever that person is, we hope that they are, well grounded in biblical truth, and will preach and espouse biblical truth, full-heartedness and full-throated, and not waver from those truths.
Yeah.
The moment the church of any kind decides that the ways of the world are more important than the ways of Jesus, we're in trouble. And that's true for any denomination.
Any denomination, yeah.
Any denomination. That we need to placate the ways of the world because the ways of the world wants us to placate to the world. That fully goes against biblical teaching.
Yeah.
And as long as we can agree on that, that's great. There was another conclave that happened some weeks ago that I read about in the New York Times. A gathering of Catholic conservatives during America Week in Rome.
Really?
Have you heard about this?
I hadn't.
So Brian Birch, who will be the next ambassador to the Holy See, good friend of the show, been on the show a couple times. Well, his brother, Patrick Birch, whose family owns Cave and Post down here in Phoenix, give a little plug to them. Great place. I'm wearing one of their shirts today.
There you go.
He sent me this article that was in the New York Times that talked about this, literally a conclave of all these different conservative organizations, conservative Catholic organizations throughout the world, especially in Europe, that met a couple weeks ago to kind of lobby different cardinals who could attend on this idea of faith, family, freedom, and within the church, and preaching those values.
So basically, making the case of the next pope being someone in more traditional,
in the vein of Pope Benedict or even John Paul. And that and this idea that Pope Francis actually, there's a red line. Someone said they the Pope cannot cross in terms of social issues, and what this person said is that he went up to the line. He didn't cross it, but he went up to the line, and we need to back the new Pope up. So I thought that was very interesting.
That is interesting,
and I'm sure we have some. And it was great to see that Brian was part of that, and he was part of that not in his capacity as a nominee or possibly the ambassador, because a lot of that had not happened yet, but just in
part
his
of Catholic vote.
Just part of Catholic vote,
which
single-handedly pushed over 50% of Catholics towards Trump.
Yeah,
not single-handedly, but they were a huge part of it,
and which became a big part of his big win.
Yeah.
So we'll wait for the white smoke.
They say it's not going to take very long. That I've been reading
articles
that they feel like it's going to move quickly.
So I have a question for you, and this is a question for our listeners too. Is the AI generated image of Trump as the Pope? It's caused a lot of controversy.
Did you see the image of the orange smoke?
Yeah, the orange smoke. That was funny. There's
a whole video out there of Trump being Pope. An
right?
AI video of Trump being Pope.
I believe that we have to find humor in the world, and there is nothing funnier than the idea of Trump being Pope because it's so absurd, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's absurd, and it's so funny to me how serious, like he'll say something and people will dismiss it, and then he'll say something and they'll think that he's dead serious. It's like, come on. I mean, he's not serious about being Pope.
Yeah, he's not serious about being Pope. He's not serious about running for a third term. He's not serious about a lot of things. It's red meat, and he throws the red meat out there, and the mainstream media are like rabid dogs. It's
what I view it as. He likes to just toy with people.
He just trolls.
And he's a master at distracting from something else. So completely. Every time there's some actual challenge or scandal or something, he's invariably going to distract everybody with some crazy comment like a third term or I should be Pope or, if that happens, look for the other stuff, because while everyone else is paying attention to the bullshit, the actual news is what it is he's trying to distract from.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the memes were hilarious. I mean, one thing I think we as Christians should be able to do is laugh at ourselves.
Absolutely.
And laugh at, all the different things that get wrapped up in religion, which is basically what this is.
Yeah.
And if we can't laugh at that, he's not saying that he's appointing himself as Christ. He's not saying that he's appointing himself as Jesus.
Do I think that there are people who worship him a little bit too much? Yeah, absolutely.
The idolatry of Donald Trump
has been real, and
is bizarre.
But it's a small and vocal number of people.
Yeah. The idolatry is bizarre.
Yeah. But it happens, and people.
But I thought the pictures were hilarious. I thought the video that I saw online was hilarious, and I get some. It's a distraction during this time of mourning and of Pope Francis. I get that, but you have to think that even some of the cardinals had a good chuckle.
I think so.
I mean, outwardly they have to say, "Oh, really not appropriate."
Well, I mean, because to them it is so absurd that it is funny.
Of course, it's absurd, but it raises a larger point, which I just said, which is we need an American Pope. We do. Why not an American Pope?
Yeah.
American conservative Pope in Timothy Dolan.
That would be great.
Timothy, in fact, I put that, he had, Cardinal Dolan, I follow him on Instagram, and last week he was, of course, at the Vatican, and he has his own, I guess, parish there at the Vatican, like the parish of Guadalupe, I want to say. See, I'm following.
Yeah.
And he's been doing these videos until he can't. And
which is now.
It was just today.
Because they locked the doors this morning.
They locked the doors and they put them all away. And I put that, I go, Cardinal Philip. I was the first one to comment on the video. I said, Cardinal Timothy Dolan for Pope.
Yeah.
We need an American Pope.
So
I'm lobbying.
Yeah.
Even
as much good
even as something I have no stake in, I'm lobbying.
No ability to change
influence the outcome at all.
I just lost my train of thought. I just thought of something that was important that we needed to talk about. That's terrible.
Time ticking.
Click, 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 click. Well, we'll have, I guess I'll remember it. We'll come back to it because we do want to hit some reactions. We want to do our quick takes or hot takes.
Happy hour takes.
Happy hour takes.
Is that what
do we call these, Alex?
Our producer wants us to do.
Yeah. But remember to like and subscribe.
Helps grow the show.
That grows the show. And we appreciate everyone for watching and listening.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know.
as
It seems it might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. Some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
So this is a pretty good example of some confusion about what the Constitution says, and Trump's saying, look, my lawyers are telling me this and you're saying that, and then the media is trying to make it out as, oh, he's not following the Constitution. He's not willing to defend the Constitution.
Well,
but I don't see it that way at all.
Yeah, so does the president, this is the ongoing debate. Does a district court judge in Arizona have the power and the authority to thwart the executive authority of the presidency? And that is a question to be played out in the courts. And I think that's what he's trying to answer.
Yeah. Well,
and he does it not eloquently, obviously, but they're trying to make it into this, he's not going to uphold the Constitution. Well, constitutionally, does that district court judge, can they shut down an entire policy that's being acted by, and usurp his Article 2 authority? That's the question.
Well, that's part of the question. But the other question is fundamental to the Fifth Amendment, which is, does the Fifth Amendment apply to citizens or does it apply to anybody who's in the United States?
And what does due process look like for an illegal versus a citizen?
Well, especially...
And my argument would be it's completely different. They are adjudicated before an immigration judge,
right,
which is much different than if you were in a district court or county court for that matter.
Well, and the other thing is that, I do think there's some relevance to the argument that the flood that came in under Biden, it wasn't like, because it's like, well, if we have to...
It wasn't an accident.
Right. It was literally, they were flying people in.
Yes.
And
so, settling people.
And so now there has to be a due process to get them out when there wasn't any kind of a screening process bringing them in.
No.
That's a legitimate question.
Yeah. And for the illegals who are here committing crimes, that due process needs to be accelerated.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
And
the courts are trying to shut it down. So I think what he's trying to say is, listen, whether I have to abide by a district court ruling, my lawyers are going to inform me on that. But it's really going to be up to the Supreme Court to determine the constitutionality of what they're ruling.
Right.
And if the Supreme Court rules, we will follow that. But when it comes to the district court, we're going to fight it.
Yeah, as they should.
That's what he's saying, and I think that's what he, he wasn't articulate in that regard. But I also have another question. Why does he keep going on Meet the Press with Kristen Welker?
Well, he's just...
He must like her.
He's an open book. This is such a different thing than when Joe Biden was president, right?
That is true.
Speaking of which, Joe Biden is going on
The View.
He's going on The View, but he's also did an interview with BBC.
He's going on The View with Jill.
Yeah.
She'll do most of the talking.
We'll see. That'll be interesting.
She has a new position.
What's that?
Yeah, she's now chief muckety-muck at the Milken Institute for Women's Health.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Huh.
She doesn't know anything about women's health.
She's a woman.
Except for that.
Give her that.
Except for that. Is she a woman?
Yes.
What is a woman? Do we know?
Yeah. So I remembered what I forgot is Marco Rubio. That dude has been given so many assignments by the president. He's Secretary of State. He's now the National Security Advisor. He is the head of USAID.
Mm-hmm.
and there
really isn't a USAID.
No, it still exists. I
mean,
there's. I
it's
think
a shell of its former
self. He has 5 roles now.
Yeah,
it's 4 or 5, right?
So he is the Henry Kissinger of our time.
Yeah, he is. And
which, you know what? I'm a big fan of Marco.
I'm a huge fan,
huge fan. Yeah, give him
load him up.
Yeah, load him up because he'll get it done, and he'll articulate exactly what he's doing in every case.
Yep,
and he'll get it done. Yeah. He gets shit done.
Yeah, he's been a remarkable.
I think that's why when Trump was asked, who do you see as your successor? He only named 2. He named J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio.
Yeah,
because they're the ones getting stuff done.
Yeah. Well, they clearly are the 2 that. It will be interesting because there's still some of those MAGA diehards who have doubts and disdain for Marco.
Yeah.
But he's proving himself valuable.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting.
It's fantastic. Okay. What's our next one?
The next one.
Okay. Canada is not for sale. So this was remember, folks, to like and subscribe because this is, how you get great information. But this was a fascinating little side-by-side with the Canadian Prime Minister and the President, and they were talking past each other.
Oh, yeah.
It was... take a watch.
Well, if I may... as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the President just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership, and I'll say this as well, that the President has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
And they have...
Well... Canada
at one point. I guess we missed it on this one, but I feel like the President said
he did say never say never. And in the clips that I've seen, Carney's like
never.
Never means never. And listen, Canada's in deep trouble. Canada, by electing another liberal who is not going to change from the policies of who he's succeeding in Justin Trudeau. Canada's in trouble. They're in trouble economically. They're in trouble socially. There's a lot happening in Canada that this gentleman's not going to address. And what I'm more convinced of is that this outcome is exactly what Trump wanted, because he is going to be able to leverage what he wants out of Canada over time with this leadership versus Pierre Poilievre.
Well, maybe the other thing that people need to watch, because I don't think this is being reported at all, but I've been watching it. We have some connections in Canada. Nadine Ness, who's been on the show, leads United Grassroots, and in Saskatchewan. Now, Alberta is having a discussion about secession, right?
Yes.
And so, and they, the premier in Alberta can, their rules allow them to, have that discussion as the leadership of the province in Alberta. In Saskatchewan, it has to be something that's referred to the people from the leadership.
Okay.
And so
it's different in every province.
Yeah. So Saskatchewan has a lot of grassroots support for secession to join Alberta. And some of the liberals there are really, going after the premier, claiming that he's not being honest with them. But basically what they want to do is shut down the voice of the people. No surprise. And so you're going to see a lot of machinations. If you watch now, like I said, I don't know how much is going to get covered here in the U.S. But if you pay attention to some Canadian press, particularly in the western part of Canada with Alberta and Saskatchewan, it's going to get very interesting because there may be a situation in which Alberta secedes and then Saskatchewan holds a vote as to whether they will join or not.
That's amazing.
And I could see...
I
could see a situation
been talking about seceding as long as I've been alive.
For a totally different reason. But now it's like, oh no, we got to keep together. This is so fascinating the dynamics.
What I understand is that the politics of Canada is really decided by two provinces, and that's Ontario and Quebec.
Yeah.
That's it. They really did. That's where the population is centered upon, both Montreal and Toronto. And then the rest of the country gets screwed.
Yeah. So it'll be, you want to talk about Canada being the 51st state. Now, I could see a situation in which Alberta and Saskatchewan become the 51st state.
That would be very interesting.
And that would be a very different dynamic for conservatives or Republicans, because we'd most likely have Republicans being elected out of those provinces. Then, because I was very much against Canada becoming a 51st state if it was the whole of Canada, because that's two very liberal senators and, a dozen liberal Democrats in the House. So, we'll
see what this technocrat, Karrin, does with what he was saying in terms of security. And what I hope he's saying is that Canada now is going to step up and provide what they've committed to in terms of NATO.
Yeah.
But which they have not done.
No.
At all.
For years.
Maybe
ever.
Yeah. For years, if not ever. And it's really why it's one of the things I agree with Trump wholeheartedly on. And that's the need for NATO members to really step up and provide their commitments.
Yeah. Yeah.
That America cannot continue to be the world's policeman.
Right.
When in the post-World War II world, when you have plenty of countries who can step up and provide assistance.
They've gotten there. They're over the Rubicon. So, all right.
What else we have?
You've been arguing all week that this is President Biden's economy. Is this now your economy, sir?
Well, I think certain aspects of it are. Costs are. I was able to get down the costs, but even that, it takes a while to get them down, but we got them down good. We lost $5 to $6 billion a day with Biden. $5 to $6 billion. And I've got that down to a great number right now in a record time. We're talking about 100 days. But just think of what that is. $5 billion a day we're losing on trade. And we were very tough with China, as you know. We put 145% tariff on. Nobody's ever heard of such a thing. And we've essentially cut off trade relationships by putting that much of a tariff on. And that's okay. We've gone cold turkey. That means that we're not losing. We lost $1 trillion to China. $1 trillion. That means we're not losing $1 trillion when we go cold turkey, because we're not doing business with them right now. And they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal very badly. We'll see how that all turns out, but it's got to be a fair deal.
When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now. And I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy and the bad parts are the Biden economy.
Well, yeah, the good parts of the Trump economy, the bad parts of the Biden economy.
I'll answer that question for him.
Yeah.
So we had Jake Duffy on the show last week from Baird, and we talked about the GDP numbers, and you have some people on the right saying, I was listening to Ben Shapiro, like screaming bloody murder about the tariffs and everything else, and I'm like, and we dove into the numbers, and the numbers really aren't that bad on really three different metrics. One, business investment is up. Two, state and federal spending is down.
Right.
So when you talk about the Biden economy, what was the Biden economy? It was all spending.
Yeah.
It was all propping up markets. And while the private sector stood on the sidelines doing nothing, holding on to their cash.
Right.
Then what Trump is trying to do, which I agree with, I don't necessarily agree on the tactics or part of the strategy of implementation, is trying to get the private sector growing again and those dollars flooding back into the marketplace.
Right. Well, and when you pull government spending back, GDP is going to go down because you've been artificially inflated because of the government spending. So yeah, so in some ways it is. I think he is actually right to say it's the good parts of the Trump and the bad parts of the bad. It's not always all going to be that, but we are, once we get into court, we're in Q2 now. By the end of Q2, it's pretty much it's his deal, right? Because everything will be washed out.
So what we really need to see is, and hopefully we're going to have him on the show when we're in D.C., which we're going to be doing a bank of podcasts in D.C. here in a little over a month. But Russ Vought and OMB, and how are they reining in spending, reining in the government, and reining in regulation?
Right.
That is going to have probably the biggest effect on the economy in the short term.
Yep.
In the long term, between now and July 4th, they got to get the tax bill done.
Yeah.
On the tariff side, ignore the noise of everything else. The noise really is focused on two entities, the EU and China, who have been screwing us for years. He's absolutely correct on that.
Right.
So how we deal with those two entities is going to be the most important. And I'm a broken record on this show. I actually did an inquiry on this. You know how many military installations we have in Germany?
I don't.
119.
What? In Germany?
In Germany, we have 40,000 people.
We have 119 installations?
Yeah, installation. We have 40,000 people there. We have 7 air bases there. 7.
Wow.
Ramstein being the biggest. Okay, that's what we're talking about. You can't buy an F-150 in Germany, but you can buy German cars here all that you want.
Yeah.
And we need to break that imbalance.
Yeah.
We absolutely have to, or else our economy and segments of our economy will continue to suffer.
Yeah.
Sorry to get on my soapbox on that, but it drives me nuts.
Totally agree. Folks, like and subscribe. Thanks again for your watching and your listening. And we'll be back later on.
We're going to be back tomorrow and Friday.
Tomorrow. Right.
So hopefully the news keeps coming.
Keeps coming.
Thanks for listening. God bless.
Take care.